Concerning Asian political participation in California and in Hawaii, it appears that Asian political participation is far greater in Hawaii than it is in the Golden State. By political participation, I mean the percentage of Asians who vote in California versus those who vote in Hawaii, and also the number of elected officials in these two states. Now, it appears that actually in Hawaii, the majority of elected officials are actually of Asian descent, whereas in California, they constitute the minority. In fact, in Hawaii, they've had quite a few successes, whereas in California, far fewer. Yes, it is true that they've had several elected Asian officials, such as Councilman Wu and also Congressman Mineta, but otherwise, Asians in the Golden State have not had as much success versus other Asians in Hawaii. There may be several different reasons for this. First of all, there's a theory of inter-minority competition. Now, according to this theory, the reason for this disparity may be that members of different minority groups actually compete with each other for political seats. So let's say in Hawaii, actually, Asians constitute over 50% of the populace in that state. Now, since they constitute the clear majority, due to sheer number, they would have a great political advantage over other minority groups. And this would, in fact, place them at a greater advantage also for obtaining seats in the government. In contrast, in the Golden State, there are far few Asians in the population. In fact, they constitute approximately 10% of the population in California. This figure is, of course, growing every year at a very rapid rate, but it's still around 10% at the moment. So by constituting a clear minority, they have a greater disadvantage for such seats. And they also must compete with other minorities, for example, blacks and Latinos, for political seats. And thus, according to the theory of inter-minority competition, they would have less of a chance of being elected to office. Asian Americans or Asians, of people of Asian descent. However, this theory may not totally explain this great disparity between the participation of Asians in California versus that of Asians in Hawaii. And I think that there may actually be many other factors which are at play here. For example, there is the phenomenon of the drop in the bucket. In economics, there is such a phenomenon. And you can also look at this from a political standpoint as well. For example, just because Asians in Hawaii constitute the clear majority, voting for an elected official in Hawaii is, when someone votes for an elected official in Hawaii, the populace may actually feel much more encouraged to vote. There's much higher voter registration there in Hawaii than in California, because after all, they may feel that their votes actually are worth much more because they have a greater chance of electing an Asian official. However, in California, the Asian populace there may feel that their votes may constitute a drop in the bucket. This may be because they feel that they are outnumbered by other people in the populace, by other people who may not vote for the Asian official, and thus they may feel that their votes are worthless and they may not vote at all. So they're very much discouraged from registering to vote, and they may be somewhat indifferent because they feel that it may not be effective. And another reason is actually that in Hawaii, the people of Oriental descent in Hawaii actually have lived in Hawaii for generations, whereas the Asians in California, many of them are recent immigrants, or more so, in fact. And this is also very important in terms of the levels of political sophistication. In Hawaii, there isn't really as much of a problem with the language barrier, whereas in California it may be a much greater factor. And also the people of Oriental descent in Hawaii, they understand the culture more, and there are more registered voters in Hawaii, more registered voters of Oriental descent in Hawaii than there are in California. So just in terms of their participation in the political process by voting, there's a substantial number in California, a substantial number of people in California of Asian descent who are not even registered to vote in the first place. Another factor is that many of the people of Asian descent in California, not only are they a foreign-born population, but they're also more inclined to actually keep up with the politics in their respective native countries than in the United States. In Hawaii, there's also the factor that the Asians in Hawaii are actually more united politically. In fact, Hawaii is basically a democratic state, whereas in California, the Asian Americans are divided along party lines. There are some who are Democrats, but there are others who are Republicans. They're not very united, and that also decreases their political clout. However, there may still be hope, because actually Asians constitute the fastest growing segment of the U.S. population. Greater than in fact, their numbers are increasing faster than those of Latinos or of blacks in the United States. And Asians and Asian Americans, in fact, are also strong in terms of their campaign contributions. Though there are far fewer who vote and far fewer who get involved politically or run for office, they nevertheless do exert some power in terms of their contributions to campaign. So there may be some prospects for the future. However, in order for Asians in California to exert more power in the political process, they would probably have to do several things. First of all, they need to align themselves with other minority groups, possibly with blacks, Latinos, on certain core issues, and then this would give them greater political power. For example, if you look at the statistics, if you look at the percentage of Asians, Latinos, and blacks in the population in California, if you combine them, they would constitute greater than half of the population in California. Now, if blacks, Latinos, and Asians were to combine in some sort of a rainbow coalition, then they could possibly pass some laws which would be beneficial to their groups, whatever the case may be. They would then constitute the majority, and they would have much more political power than they would individually. Another thing is that they really need to develop some sort of pan-Asian ethnicity, because at the moment, Asians are a very heterogeneous group, not only in terms of language and culture, but also in terms of economic and political interests. For example, people from China or Japan or Vietnam, they consider themselves very ethnically different. Communication barriers there, and there are also many other cultural and economic barriers. And in order for Asians to have more political clout, they really need to unite. However, even in the case that Asians do unite and formulate some sort of pan-Asian ethnicity, it is still very probable that Asians in California, or even throughout the U.S. as a whole, that they would not have the same sort of power politically as do the Asians in Hawaii. Now, this is really due to just the sheer number, and also just the fact that the Asians in Hawaii are just more united in general. And Asians in Hawaii do constitute 50% of the population in Hawaii, and that in itself is a major factor at play, which is just not the case in California. Probably even with the growing percentage of Asians in California, may not be the case in California for a while.